So this video is going to show you how to further make sure that all of the background is erased. We're also going to set the image up with a background, and we're going to crop the image and set up our figure where we want it to be for the iTunes gift card. Okay, it sounds like a lot, but it's really not a lot. We're going to make a new layer, so you hit the new layer button right on the top left hand side of the layers window. And we're going to dump a color. A lot of the times you just use black. We want a color behind here so we see a contrast against the background and the background color being black, and then what you might have missed. So I basically put a black piece of paper in front of the figure, so I'm just going to switch it. So this allows you to see where you might have missed some areas. You can see I hit some bits of background over here, maybe a little bit over here, so it's pretty much all over the place. So it's at that point where you can go back to layer 1 and either just use the eraser tool, especially if it's just little bits that are far away from the figure. But if it's stuff that's a little bit closer, you might need to use some other tools that will allow you to have a little bit more control over what you're doing. So over here I'm going to use the Polygonal Lasso tool. Get that big hunk over there, and so you just kind of continue on until all of the stuff is gone. If you have, up here I used the magic wand tool, and you see it kind of left a bit of a glow. Perhaps I didn't use the magic wand tool. Maybe if I went ahead and had a little bit of a higher tolerance, maybe it would have selected more. I mean, some kids, they end up just continually using the magic wand tool when, quite honestly, just using something like the Polygonal Lasso tool and going around the edge very slightly will give you a much nicer edge. So if I do this edge right here, you can see it looks pretty good, and it doesn't really take you in a ridiculously long period of time. This process is the most time consuming, I guess. It will take the longest. I don't want this to be where you're done in 5 minutes, because most likely you didn't crop your image correctly. So you want to make sure you give yourself a bit of time to do this properly. For me it's horrible to do this, and then you spend, I don't know, 5 minutes instead of spending 10 minutes on something, and then you go back, it's like it looks horrible, and you have to go back and start again anyway. So as I said before, if you use the eraser tool, some kids just can't stay away from it. That's fine, but you have to make sure that you have to have a really, really steady hand. The eraser tool, I like it because you could see the line, the edge is much nicer. It's a little bit more refined. So generally the magic wand tool is okay, but much nicer edge will come from either an eraser tool or any of the selection tools where you remove pieces. Just makes a nicer edge. So hopefully you can appreciate that, and it might be worth the extra time, as I said. Sometimes black isn't the best color when you're trying to find the little bits. Sometimes you might want to try a bright color like a red or something. And we're going to be doing that next anyway, so I'm going to be checking this out a second time. So you're just going to go ahead and remove everything. There's a big one right there. So I did use the eraser tool. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of it because it's just, if I mess up, I gotta go back like quite a few steps. All right. I'm going to take this layer and I'm going to replace the color. You go to the color picker in the foreground. Thinking about using a red. You can change your mind through the process. It's literally just dumping another color on top of the black. They won't mix. And this will allow you to a little different point of view and a little bit of different angle. Make sure you got all your pieces. Now, I'm going to keep the red. Like I said, I can change my mind later, but I think I'm going to keep the red, wrong layer. And that's the color that I'm going to use for this design. I think the red will look nice. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is you got to crop this image so it's the right size for this project. So the size that we're using, we're going really small. It's going to be the size of a credit card. You're going to go to the crop tool, and the width is only going to be 2¼ inches wide, and the height is going to be 3¼ inches wide. The resolution, because it's so small, instead of 300, let's make it 400. So it's going to be a little bit finer tuned. So I'm going to now decide on, since I think it's just going to take too much space, this figure. So I'm going to shrink it down because there's going to be other elements to this project. There's going to be a shadow, which is going to be over here. If I decide I want the shadow behind her, I can certainly move her to the left and have the shadow coming out over here. But I think I want it this way, where I want the book more in the center of the picture. Okay. Could I move this around later on? Absolutely. But you want to try to get it as good as possible. You do not want to use the bounding box on the edges. You want to use the corners, or else it'll change the proportion. So always use the corner when you're making it bigger and smaller. Okay. The next step is going to show you how to start building on the layers to make shadows and overlays and that kind of thing.